Hey friend, Dawn here. I am so excited that you're tuning in again to this week's podcast episode. Now, maybe it's not again. Maybe this is your first time and you're still in for a treat. If you didn't know, I've been doing a 5-part series with my friend Lindsay of She Makes Wave podcast, and we've been doing The Anxious Creative Makes Waves. And this week's podcast episode is all about faith. And this might go in a different direction that you think it might go in. It is so good. I think this might be my favorite out of all 5 episodes. I don't know. I think everyone's my favorite. So if you haven't gone back and listened to the last 4, make sure you do that. But go ahead and dive into this episode. Oh my gosh, we've got so much fun coming your way.
I overthink, I overshare, and I overanalyze. So come explore with me as I chat about business, life, and relationships, all through the lens of an anxious creative.
Faith, our final episode on this journey together. Dawn and I have set out to share with you our stories and lessons in life. I don't know. It sounds like a romance novel.
I feel like I couldn't even barely hear you. I was like, was my singing overpowering? Faith. I feel like we need I'm like totally doing the sway because I'm standing. Faith, what is it?
We are here to share with you our lessons in faith, and we talked a little bit in the last episode about how we have to lean into our faith and what that looks like. And I thought we just decided to go rogue on the last episode because it was something that we both wanted to talk about. So it means different things, I think, for both of us, but there's an overlap. Mm-hmm. So Dawn, take it away.
Yeah, like immediately when I hear the word faith, it kind of triggers me a little bit because I was brought up in a very conservative black and white mentality, like faith community. And there was a lot of damage that was done in that growing up phase. And so I want people listening to know that I am not talking down to, communities of faith by any means, but I'm just speaking from my personal experience. So if anyone listening, I just want you to have the grace to hear anything that we have to say about anything, knowing that it's coming from our personal experience and we're not casting a wide net on everybody. But we're talking about our particular scenarios. So when I hear faith, I immediately kind of get a little bit tensed up because it's a word that was used a lot in the communities that I was a part of that I feel like did a lot of damage to my life. But when I do sit and think, I remember faith is trusting in the things that we can't see. And that's when I look at my life and I look at how it's unfolded, I have more faith now than I ever did before, but I understand it in a completely different context.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't feel like I really understood faith or was given, really leaned into faith until I had gone through things in my life and in my marriage and in my career that was I have to just believe that it can be different. I have to believe that the outcome can be different than the outcome I've had. And faith is I don't know, the word that honestly comes to mind when I think of what how I've been able to pick my life back up and how I've been able to keep it moving. I would say grace and faith, but faith being something that I didn't really have a lot of. I think I was someone who liked inspirational quotes, but they didn't went in one ear and out the other. Whereas faith is just literally like you said, trusting in what you can't see. And I know back to experiences, you've been divorced, I've almost been divorced. It's we bring our experiences, and I think that those times really shape that. And I think you're really tested, and I think that you can become better through those times and use those experiences to tap into that faith, or you can use it to we all know that person that walks around with a badge of honor because things that happened to you weren't fair, but I really can already see how my life is better because of terrible things.
Totally. I always say my divorce was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but also the best. And it taught me that I have so much more grace for people. Like I used to be a very self-righteous, judgmental person that like wouldn't admit that. I wouldn't have called myself that. But I remember thinking like, oh, like I'm better than them. I've got it really figured out and they're a little bit lost. Or like, I remember hearing about people at our church that got a divorce after 2 years of marriage. And I was like, wow, they really didn't try that hard. And then all of a sudden, years later, I found myself going through a divorce after 2 years and 2 months after I'd gotten married and realizing like, well, shit, Dawn, you like way to go thinking you knew anything about divorce and marriage when you were a single girl looking from the outside in, because nobody knows what happens behind closed doors and no scenario is the same as another. And 2 years and 2 months can feel like an eternity when it's a very unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, and I think it ends up making you, if you go through things like that and you like grow from them and you lean into different like, things, I think that you kind of become a part of a secret society. Like the people that I'm drawn to now, there's like a soul level depth to them that like I wouldn't have seen or appreciated before. And it's interesting because you and I've talked about, we're both Rachel Hollis fans, and as she's going through her divorce and the kind of the cruel things that you and I both seen people say, it's
Oh
like,
my gosh.
it's not okay. And, I think that we all have to really be aware of the fact that like, you're not a better person or in a better position because you cast judgment on someone else's scenario. And I think that we do that and it's like, what's hurting in us, or what are we so terrified of happening in our lives? We have to speak like kind of cruel words into someone else's painful season.
Right. Like, and the audacity of us to like, when I hear people say like, oh, that's really cute what they're doing. Or like, aw, like those sorts of things. And like, that's sweet that they're trying. And it's like, it's putting yourself above them and like forgetting where you came from.
Yeah, no, and I feel like faith kind of looks like a lot of different things, but I feel like it's kind of just like for me, even like, bringing renters into my salon. Like I mean, it's been scary for me because I've had a lot of bad experiences, but like believing that I can get a different outcome because I'm going to show up differently, or people,
Mm-hmm.
and that like, and it's like stretching yourself and being like, okay, like this person could be awesome. Am I really going to let everything that's happened to me keep me from getting this like business relationship, this partnership that like I ultimately could have on the other side of all these learnings and all these teachings? So like, how about in your life? Like, how is like leaning into being like, okay, like I've been burned or that's happened, but like, I'm going to try anyway because I believe it can be different.
Yeah, like I immediately think of like being a boss, and like I dabbled in being a boss for like the first 5 years of my business. I'd like hire a friend to do some stuff and like I'd do their hair in return, or like I had like kind of, but I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't have boundaries. I didn't like know, all the things that we've talked about in these previous episodes, I didn't have. And then I started to think like, well, clearly I'm not a good boss if I like, and like, this is so frustrating. How do people do it? Because these people are doing it all wrong. And I was like a control freak and a micromanager. And then realizing like, okay, I can shift this internal talk. And like, if I keep doing what I've always been doing, I'm going to keep getting the same result that I've always been getting. But I need to trust myself and have faith in the fact that I can be a leader. I can be a boss, but what does that mean in the growth? And then this last 2 years has been really amazing. And I've been able to grow my business, and I've been able to, have some employees and have contracting people in my business, and realizing like, oh, like I was giving myself this narrative of like what I thought what I was allowed to be, what I could be. And I had to start having faith that I could be more.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, because I think in like also like being okay with back to like people seeing you as that,
Mm-hmm.
people seeing you as a leader and not being like letting it bother you that people, I don't know, like that people could get like they have opinions about like how big you can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I,
love that.
I think like, and we limit ourselves because we don't have faith in ourselves, or we've been hounded so far into the ground by people that we don't even know how to believe in ourselves.
Yeah. No, I love that. And honestly, I think that like I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like when you put yourself back out there, or you're like, I'm going to be a leader, like I need to grow into this because I want this for my life, or I want to help these people. I don't know. I feel like the universe just kind of sends you like little angels.
I'm just like picturing these little angels floating down.
Angels that come, because I mean in the form of like people that come into your life. It's like we talked about in other episodes about how you have to start like on the road and start walking the walk, but then it's so cool to watch the people that come alongside you. Has that been true for you?
Yeah, like I'd say you're one of my angels.
I would say, I was hoping that we were going to hoping it was going to go there. But no,
It's
totally.
like I set that one up and just you knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, you hit it in the hole. But yeah, no, like just how like people come alongside you when you show up for your own life.
Absolutely. Sorry, I've got the giggles. Yeah, and like I even think of like this whole boss journey that I'm talking about right now is like when there would be moments of like hiccups or frustration on my end of like, why is this happening again? Going like, okay, this is a pattern, and this always happens to me is something I need to internally reflect on because I'm the common denominator. And so how am I not, and that's like that part of like having faith that I can become a good boss and I can become a good leader. But when these things that always happen to me happen, how can I reflect on that and change that? And I even think like, so there's that boss journey, but that's also my like romantic relationship history is like, how come, like I seem to, all the guys I date seem to always be like this. And it's like, why am I picking these kind of people? And like, for me, it was like, I was finding boys to date that like validated my biggest insecurities. Like I found people that put truth to the fact that I didn't think I was worthy. And so I like, as much as like they are responsible for their own lives and the way they acted and treated me, I don't think is fair. I also sought out a type of person to validate my biggest fear. Cause then if they validated that fear, then I could stay comfortable in this safety bubble of not pushing myself outside of it.
Yeah, I love that because it's like, I feel like the word that comes up is curiosity. Like looking at yourself, you've been the only common denominator your whole life. Get curious about how you show up and get curious about how it continues to put you in the same spot. Because I agree with you. The way that I did my career is how I did friendship. It's how I did romantic relationships. And there was no difference to how they were done. And the way you do one thing is how you do everything. And I believe there's some truth to that. And like getting curious instead of being, I feel like for a long time, focused on everyone else. Like they're doing it wrong, I could do that better. But really just like being like, why do I let people make me feel like that? Like I'm letting this happen. I'm creating the environment for this pattern to continue to be a part of my life.
Absolutely. And like recognizing those patterns are hard because it's so much easier to feel like stuff is being done to you than you play a part in it. Because and that's like that passive aggressive thing that we were talking about is like, as long as I can like wash my hands and be like, oh, I don't know this, like I don't play a part, then I don't have to change or I don't have to take ownership. But when we start, then like the crazy thing about this is that I'm like totally a control freak. And yet like, so if I can convince myself that something's out of my control, which is weird, you'd think I'd want to convince myself that it is within my control, but I want to absolve myself of responsibility so I can say I'm not in control of it, because then I can stay the victim. And I don't consider myself ever in a victim mentality ever. But if I can make myself the victim, and even with, this is kind of off topic, but I feel like somebody needs to hear this. Even with my divorce, it would be so easy. And in the beginning, I blamed him for everything. Like he was the reason. And then realizing that it takes two people and we both own different parts of it. And I remember when I first started dating Nick, well, not first, it was like a little while later. And I was like, you never really asked me a lot about my divorce. Like, and he's like, yeah, I didn't really know like how much I can. And I was like, hey, if we're together, like you deserve to know anything you want. And I was like, so, and he's like, okay, well, like, what part did you play in it? And I was like, damn, that's a really good question.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, and I'm like, legit, like, that's like for someone who, like, putting myself in Nick's shoes, like, he's dating this girl. He knows I've been divorced, and he's considering, like, a long-term relationship. Like, what part did she play? And I remember my response to him was, like, I was like, yeah, I definitely played a part. And then we went to a conversation where, like, I owned the stuff that I felt was responsible. And later on in the I don't know if that's the same day or another time, but I was like, what did you learn from that? And he's like, if you wouldn't have been able to say you played a part in it, that would have been a red flag for me, because it always takes two people. There's different scenarios. Maybe, I won't want to say it always takes two people. There may be like exceptions to that, but oftentimes, like, it takes two to tango, right? And he's like, the fact that you were willing to own responsibility showed me that you were in a healthy place with it. And and I was like, oh, interesting.
totally. I love that. And I was thinking about how, like, there's a helpful way to say that. And then that's like, because it's like, you guys are starting a relationship, you're through things. There's also the person that, like, 4 days into your relationship blowing up is like, well, you have to figure out what your part was. And you're like, how is that kind right now? Because I have to come around to that. And, like, different situations, different, kind of relationship issues, you can have gone through something that wasn't your fault and that you didn't deserve, and still see your part in it, and see the way
100%.
that you created the environment that allowed for things to happen that were not kind or not healthy. And I think that there's a differentiator that I think some people don't always see.
No, it's like the fault versus responsibility.
Yes, I've never heard that, but I feel like, to me, there are people that are going to say that in a faulty way to you, and it's going to hurt you, because it's going to be hurtful, because you're going to know what actually happened, and no one inside of that's not inside of that relationship really knows what happened. And
Totally. Like, I dated a guy once that was like, I don't know if I should be dating you. You're divorced. And he like would say that to me almost weekly. And I stayed with him for like 8 months, but I was like, so like, Dawn today would not, like, I would have not even considered starting dating him. Right. Like, and I'm so glad that I went through that season to build the self-worth and the self-value. But like, the fact that I allowed someone to talk to me like that, and I stayed with them because I had such little self-worth.
yeah, well, even like having faith in yourself, like, I think about that all the time, about healthy Lindsay. I think about how healthy Lindsay would have shown up in all those scenarios so differently. And that's
Mm-hmm.
ownership for, like, the part that I played. It's not saying you deserve to have things happen to you. It's saying, like, God, it actually builds trust in yourself and faith in yourself to say, I don't need to be afraid of things happening to me again, because that, like, Lindsay of today wouldn't tolerate being treated like that. She would get up from the table that she was being treated like that at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like, I just think, like, I would have slapped that person in the face. But that was that whole, like, looking for validation that, like, yeah, I am a terrible person and I'm not worthy. And then thinking like, oh, I'm so lucky to be dating this person.
Well, I love that when you weren't comfortable in or confident with, like, that it was the right thing for you, you drew people into your life that kind of confirmed what you believed.
Yeah, I think that's what we do, right? Instead of looking for people who can bring us up, we look for people that can confirm the shittiness, and then we keep ourselves safe. Where then I thankfully got out of that relationship and, started to grow in myself and started to, like, spend time with people that validated the good in me. And, like, dating Nick, who's someone who, like, trusts me, who believes in my crazy ideas, who validates me, who believes in me. And, like, I look at not just my professional life, but my personal life, how it's grown, and how, like, it's easy to find people to confirm our worst fears. It's easy to find people that they're hurting, so they keep you small to keep themselves safe. And it's easy to keep that company. But when you can start to find, you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think you said that recently. Spend time with people that are going to lift you up. And going back to that I have a really good analogy, that responsibility versus fault. What's that?
Hit us with it.
Hit us with it. It's coming at you. So I think it's in the book, At the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, where he says there's a very different there is a very different distinction between fault and responsibility. And oftentimes people think taking responsibility something admits fault. And so they don't want to take responsibility for something that's not their fault. And he uses the analogy of like, if you're sitting at a red light and you're stopped and someone comes up and rear ends you, that is not your fault whatsoever. But you are still responsible to take your car in and get it fixed. But how many times do people in life go, someone hit my car, it's not my fault. And so like, are you just not going to drive anymore because you don't have a vehicle? Like, and it sucks. I remember like that was one of my like adult first lessons of like being like, why do I have to do this? I have to go take it in. I have to be without a car for 4 or 5 days. Like, this sucks. And that's just part of being an adult and being a human, is like, we have to take responsibility even for things that aren't our fault. We have to take responsibility for our lives and I just hit mute. We have to take responsibility for our lives and our future, even despite the things that happen to us, even despite the shitty rocky roads that we go through. And then when we have faith in the future and we have faith, and I think I have like, yeah, it says have faith in yourself and in your future right here in this little thing right there.
Yeah. There was like a different quote, but same kind of thing. It's like, your wound might not be your fault, but your healing is your responsibility.
Absolutely.
You break someone rams like their car into you. You have a broken leg. Like, it wasn't your fault, but you still have a broken leg that needs rehabilitation. Like, that's what happens in our lives. And I think that like, you can spend time, and I think it's part of the journey, part of the process of, I don't want this to be my story. I didn't sign up for this. Like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And I think that you get to do that a little bit, but then at a certain point, are you going to spend your life feeling bad for what you have? Or are you going to use it? And it's like, you're getting stuff from it that you can use later. And I don't know, like for me, for sure, I'm using things in my day-to-day life or how I show up because of things that have happened to me and hurt me. And I guess I'd be curious if you've done the same.
Yeah, like I think like if you break your leg, you're not going to sit on the couch and not go to the doctor and not get it set and not go to physio because you're like, well, but I think sometimes we do that. But I think like there's been really shitty situations that have come to my life that have benefited me hugely now that I've learned from. And so I want people to know that like, it sucks. We do not deserve half the things that happen to us in life. And I think that's the thing, is like, I don't want anyone to think like, well, I guess this is the cards that I got dealt. I guess this is what I deserve. Like, I remember thinking like after my divorce, growing up in a mentality of like divorce is wrong and bad and sinful. And then I remember cutting a friend's hair once and he was like, yeah, I absolutely think your divorce is sinful. And I was like, oh, like, cause he doesn't.
Aggressive.
I know. I like wanted to like, like jab him with the scissors. And like he had, and then like, this is me venting because I'm still wounded from it. It still hurts. He was like, do you think you guys maybe could have tried counseling? And I was like, we did. Thank you. Thank you for thinking, anything that went on behind closed doors. And that was really hurtful. And that was kind of like another affirmation of like, good luck finding the person that you want to be with. The person that you crave to be with isn't going to want you. You're damaged goods. That's what I felt like. So then I sought out someone who confirmed that, right? Who continually told me how, I don't know if I should be dating you. You're divorced. I don't know, and the shittiest things, but I sought that person out because that's what I thought I deserved. And then when I met Nick, it's a whole other story, but thinking like, oh, I remember like throwing everything at him. Like, I was like, I've done a lot of drugs in my life when I lived overseas. I was like, I was married and divorced, and I like threw everything in my like closet that I try to keep hidden at him. So that, and especially because him being a minister, and I was like, everyone that had to do with the church shamed me.
Here's all the emotional baggage. I'm just gonna set it here.
First date, first time meeting in real life. Like, we had like chatted online, and I was basically like, huh! And then I'm like, kind of like, all right, bring it. Tell me how shitty of a person I am. Like, right. And then his response, no word of a lie, was like, it's really interesting to hear all the things that life's thrown at you and the person you're trying to become because of it.
Oh, that's romantic.
And I remember being like, I don't know what the role this guy's going to play in my life is, but like, I think a pretty big one.
You're like,
Like,
nonetheless, I'll start going to his parish, if nothing else.
yeah, which like funny enough, I don't go to church anymore, but like just like he met me with grace and being like he saw where I was moving towards. And that's like if I can show anyone hope, whether it's romantic relationships or business relationships or like family relationships or whatever it is, like that future that you crave and you see for yourself 100% can become reality. Just make sure you surround yourself with the people that see it in you too.
Yeah, I love that. Like I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about how, like, isn't it amazing how differently you show up when you come out the other side and how confident you are in yourself? Like what you did with Nick that day was so brave in that moment, but I feel like you live from that place now. I feel like that's what you
Yeah.
are. And like, I think it's kind of cool to talk about how when you come out the other side of it, like someone being like, oh, you almost got divorced, or they'll say something mean to me. And it's like, I'm not uncomfortable with it. You are.
Yeah. Yeah. People really like I had a friend once be like, I can't believe you talk about your previous marriage in front of Nick. And I'm like, it happened. It's not, it existed. Like what? And like people want to like sweep things under the rug. Like it's the name we don't mention in this house. Right. And like, I remember one time, like my ex-husband's name is Cole. And like, I don't say it a lot and I want to respect him in that. But like, you know, people being like, whoa, don't say that name. And it's like, wow, it's not something that didn't exist. Like, why do we like our shameful pasts or the things that make people uncomfortable to talk about? They want to just like, let's just erase history. And
Right.
it's like, no, that's a really important part of my history.
And they're almost saying like, oh, I want you to show up as who you are today, but I don't want, like, we'll skip that whole season. It's like, no, that season made me. Like, I don't want to skip it. And like,
Mm-hmm.
and like the way that it's like, your hard seasons can make some people so uncomfortable. And you and I've talked about how, like, having your handyman come over and like be like, where's your couch? And you're like, oh, well, our mom moved out. And he's like, oh, well, Merry Christmas. I hope you have a great holiday. It's like, I'm sorry. You almost want to walk around and be like, I'm sorry to do this to you. But it's like, wait, this happened to me.
Yeah. People get so uncomfortable when you're honest.
Yeah, I think that, but that's to me what's so refreshing. Or like, you'll say something to someone that you like, I took a break from like my husband's family for almost 2 years. And I came back and I'd be like, when did you guys do that? And they were like, 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, so it's not a new change. People don't know what to do with it.
Absolutely. And I can be pretty frank and I'll just like call things as they are. So like there'll be things where like someone will be like, when did you get that? And I was like, I think it was a wedding gift. And they'll be like,
I love that.
yeah. And then I like, oh yeah. And then like, somebody like, oh, this is really nice. I'm like, yeah, I got that for my wedding. And they're like, cause Nick will be in the room and they're like, and I was like, he knows that. Like, I sure hope he knows I was married.
Wouldn't it be kind of funny to walk through the door of like, oh, I guess I should tell him, Nick, I was married before we were together. Like this whole like shtick of like
Yeah.
talked about this. Like
Yeah.
it's
Like,
just,
oh, like, shh, don't tell, like, I just need to quickly tell him.
yeah, like excuse me for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because I feel like it builds like I feel like I have a sense of humor about things.
Mm-hmm.
Like even what you were saying about like, oh, that was a wedding gift, or like someone will be like, oh, do you have this at the shop? I'm like, oh, I didn't get that in the salon divorce. Yeah, no, I didn't get that. And like, it's just funny to me, like how it's kind of, to me, it's refreshing, and it's a way for me to incorporate and to live into like my like whole story that I'm comfortable
Mm-hmm.
up until that point. And it's just funny to me how you being comfortable with the things that have happened to you sometimes shines a light on the fact that other people are still not comfortable and it didn't even happen to them.
Right. And it's so fun. Like, and I wonder if it's like part of that people pleasing part, or like people just don't know how to navigate uncomfortable situations. And like when we've actually healed from it, like I wasn't able to talk this candidly about it in the rawness of it, But when you've healed from it and when you've moved forward from it, and you can look back and be thankful for it, for the person it's made you be, it's not a big deal to talk about it. And it's not like, it's one thing for me to talk about it and another for someone to like inquire about it. Do you know what I mean?
That'll probably always be gross, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like people want to expect you to talk shit about people. And it's like when you can be like, like it, things didn't end well. Like I just even think like, so I had a girl that worked for me for a year as a hairstylist. And then I laid her off. And it was because I was realizing I didn't want to be a boss and I wasn't happy being a boss and I was doing her a disservice. But, I didn't announce it online. I didn't, and me and her were good friends. And it was extremely hard for me to say like, this is your last day and I wish you well. And here's your payout for 3 weeks. But like, this is our last day working together and I wish you well. And I'll give you a great reference. But people want to be like, what happened? And I was like, nothing. And like, they wanted drama. And I was like, literally it was no drama, zero drama.
And I think it's just sometimes and it's easier to like, when you haven't healed something yet, to just keep it professional. And I think that, like people want the gossip. They're like hairstylists, like gossip, but like, I rather learn while I'm doing people's hair. Honestly, like I know a little bit about everything. Like I have a client who once she was a private investigator. I learned how to look people up in open states. Like, why are you wasting your time with people that you could be learning stuff from? And like people love to talk about what they do. So like I've kind of found a way, like, like not to like totally switch gears, but to be like, when you're in those seasons and people want to put that pressure on you to get the gossip, it's like, enough about me. Susan, can we talk about your disguises that you wear? I think because that's real. And then that person gets fired up and they're excited to be there. And I think sometimes we have to give people the whole story to because like we owe that to people, or that we're just open books. But there's a way to be open and be private. And I think I've been able to do that. And it sounds like you've been able to do that. And I feel like you're one of the realest people I've ever met. And I still feel like there's a level of privacy that you have that I think that is classy, and I appreciate it. And I think that sometimes behind the chair, we can kind of get confused at what our role is. We're doing hair, we're lifting people up. And if we can empathize, that's cool, but it doesn't need to be at our expense of our healing.
110%. I love that. And I like that you said, did you say classy? Did you use that word for me? Dang, I don't know if anyone's ever used the word classy to describe me.
Like, have parts of your story that don't just like diarrhea on people. I think I used to think like, oh my God, I gotta like tell people everything. And, there's a level of class that comes with privacy and holding back some of yourself and some of your story for the right people. And that's not everyone.
Absolutely. You don't owe it to anyone to share your full story, or you don't have to justify anything. It's funny because like, when my dog passed last year, Leroy, like he was such a big part of my online life. And so people really cared about him, but sharing what happened is something that I don't share. And people really, out of caring wanted to know. But then there was like a few people that felt really obligated to know and got really offended when I didn't share what happened. And that was just a boundary for me. And that was something that was very personal and private to me, and was I'm going to get choked up, but it was like really hard to work through because so much of him was public, but this was like a private thing that I was keeping to myself.
Well, yeah, and I think that people get confused, and you bring up a really good point of like, when you share so much of yourself, you have to be the one that sets the limit for as far as it goes. And you are such an open person. I feel like I'm such an open person. So it's like, it's up to us to decide like where that line is, and then to just like live to that line, like live at our edge of sharing and caring. And then anything on the other side of it, like you don't owe people an explanation. And like,
yeah,
I think that's the thing, like kind of like even with like Rachel Hollis and what she's going through, it's like people say like, she said she loved her husband. It's like, she does love her husband, and it might not be healthy for them. We don't know. But when people are living in real time, and then there's social media and people feel like they know people, they forget that like that we're still human, and that you're a human. And I've said it before, as hairstylists, we're a character in people's lives. And sometimes people lose sight of that. Like, you have real hurts and real pain and real loss. And, you know, you and I didn't really know each other super well back then, but I knew how you love that dog because of how much I love my dog. And like, I felt like so sad about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying teary-eyed too, but I felt sad about it. But I feel like, I don't know, I feel like, but like anything beyond that is like, just like, to me, it's inappropriate. When someone shares to their, like to their edge, I guess I just assume that everyone's sharing to their edge, and that's going to look different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But expecting people to share beyond that, it shows me a lack of self-awareness or boundary in your own life. But it's hard when you're like hurting from something, and people press on those hurts by doing stuff like that. It's
yeah. And then like, there's the flip side where some people are just like waiting for someone to ask them to tell them more. Right. Like, I remember meeting a girl once who her sister had tragically passed from getting hit. She went for a jog at 10 p.m. in Saskatchewan, which like it stays daylight till like 11 p.m. in the summer, and went out for a jog and got hit by a car. And like, the guy driving the car was just reaching for a Slurpee and like didn't see her come out between two cars. And it was like very tragic death. And I remember being at a birthday party, and I said, everyone kind of left. It was just me and this girl. And I was like, it felt awkward, right? Like, we don't know how to navigate these situations where people are hurt. And like, do we talk about it? Do we not? And I just said, I heard about your sister and I'm so sorry. And I'm not sure if you want to talk about it or not, but I wanted to acknowledge it. And she said, oh my gosh, thank you. It's all I want to talk about. Nobody's asking me.
yeah, I think there's the elephant in the room situation.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so now when I navigate those situations, I always say like, hey, whether you want to talk about it or not, I'm here for if you do, and I'm here to support you in however. So let me know how I can support you. If you want to talk about it, great. If you don't, that's great too.
Oh, I love that. I actually, behind the chair, you know, when someone comes in and they're like struggling, like to your same point, some people it's helpful to talk about. And sometimes for me it's helpful. And then sometimes what's helpful is to not. And so like, it's kind of cool, like you said, like when you give people that space, like I've said to clients before, like, would it help you to talk about it? Or is it one of those things where it wouldn't? Because I think there is, in some days, and it could just be the day, right? But I find that is so accurate. And, you know, like I've had people like their daughter has cancer or something like that. And I'll say, how's it been going? Do you ever feel like a zoo animal where people just come to watch you? And literally people will look at you and be like, you're the first person that's like acknowledged that like I'm on display, and people keep dropping donuts off, and you're like, wow, like you can open the door, and if people walk through it, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And being respectful if they don't. But I think people like, there's some people that like get off on like knowing people's stuff.
Well, yeah, and like they love to be like the one in their town or like wherever, let's say like where I do hair, it's like sometimes people, I think they love to be the one that like is the first one to send the text out to like all the friend clients, like stop Lindsay today. Yeah, so little tidbit, and it's like, oh my God, and you know it's happening when someone's like, oh yeah, I got a text from so-and-so. I'm like, alrighty, confirms it. It's happening.
Have you read Amy Poehler's book, her autobiography?
Would you recommend it?
Well, I feel like we should pause this and I should go get it and then come back.
Okay.
All right, we're back. I could not find the part in the book, but Amy Poehler's book, Yes Please, is so good. And what we did find was even better. Nothing is anyone's business. And if you guys are watching this, you guys, I'm holding it up right now. And I like, how much does that resound to you, Lindsay?
I mean, if I had just had that tattooed on my forehead for about 2 years, that would have really helped me get through the day. And backwards, so I could read it through the salon mirror. That would have been helpful.
One of my mantras that I look at daily is, what other people think of me is none of my business.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And just like letting your mess kind of make you better is something that like I continue to do. So it's not anything you need to be ashamed of, anything anyone's going through, because Dawn and I are pretty awesome.
Yeah, we've been through shit and we got out the other side. But we aren't shit. Well, we're the shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, we are the shit.
Yeah, so I hope anybody that's listening that's maybe going through a hard time or feeling beaten down, that they can trust that their future, they have a worthy future ahead of them, and they can still, like, I was 28 when I got divorced. I was 31 when I moved to a new city. I kind of thought like my chances had gone by, but there's so much more to life.
Yeah, there's so many chapters. You might be in a rough one right now, but like it's not the whole book. It can feel like the whole book, but I kind of think like a lot of like when we look back at our lives, there'll be little blips and you have to kind of hold on to that.
Yeah. I wish I could play Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten song.
Oh my
The
God.
rest is still unwritten.
Those kind of songs really speak to me.
Yeah. Well, Lindsay, doing this series with you has been so fun.
Oh, I've had the time of my life, Dawn.
Now I have the time. I'll just leave it to me to pick a song for every sentence. No, it's been so good. And I'm curious, those of you guys that are listening, do you want more of Lindsay and me? Maybe they've had enough and they'll be honest.
This is an honest group. I know that. So we'll have to do a poll on our pages on Instagram and kind of we'll hear what they have to say.
Yeah, we'll let the people speak. But it won't affect our worth, and we'll keep our boundaries, and we're going to have faith.
Yep. And we're going to keep our money mindsets. Boom.
Boom. All right. Well, this was so fun. I'm kind of sad.
Yeah, this isn't goodbye. This is just a see you later.
This is just a see you later. That it is.
All right. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I should laugh or if I should cry because the series is done. I think I'm going to have some like PTSD, not PTSD, that's not the right thing. I'm gonna miss Lindsay. We've had so much fun together. And I'm curious, shoot us a DM, either maybe send both of us one. If you love this, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to know, you want to know more, I just want to know if you want to be our friend. We had such a blast creating this for you. Oh my gosh. And I feel like this was the perfect episode to end it. But I have this sneaking feeling that Lindsay and I are not done doing these series together. We had so much fun. We loved hearing from you. So if you liked this episode, if you liked the series, why don't you go ahead and leave a review if you're listening to on Spotify, iTunes, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube. Go ahead and leave a comment or review. And you know what I'd love is if you just hit subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out and you don't miss some of the amazing things that are coming up in the future. So go ahead, share this with your friends, and DM us letting us know. Thank you so much for being around for the Anxious Creative Makes Waves series. We had a blast. Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of both of us. We had a blast doing this with you, and we can't wait to hang out with you some more. See you soon, friend.